Dr. Ventnor's work is, my view, the equivalent of the development of nuclear weapons when you realize that he created life in a cell back in 2010. This technology paired with something called CRISPR, which is like an editing software for genes, makes a number of things immediately available. He programmed yeast cells to produce anything he wanted. They can produce perfume, they can produce petroleum, they can produce any peptide, anything we program the DNA to do, and it's in the living cell. These can be inserted into you through the hypospray needles, almost like Dr. McCoy on Star Trek, giving you the hyperspray. It just blasts now plasmids into your squamous cells. You can engineer anything. You can engineer a unique thing that would only kill one person in the world. It's how it's done. You put in a specific gene slicing, you program what you like, you put it in the cell, and it can reproduce and make as much as you like. For those of you who don't know, your DNA is usually all wrapped up in tight little coils. And so what you're doing is when they create plasmids and put them into cells, it sends a signal and tells which portion of the DNA should unwrap, unfold, and produce a product. Related to this is an idea called dreads. These are designer receptors that can be remotely controlled. So think about it for a moment. You can create a designer receptor, you can create a cell, you can put it somewhere in the body, and you can remotely activate it when the brain's exposed to the right signal. Using this technology, people have been able to transfer memories from one fruit fly to another by signaling through a light stimulus into the retina. Right now, in most animals, it's done by putting a substance into their body that will actually activate the neuron in the way that you want it. So you have the capacity to create any product. As long as you know the DNA sequence, you can insert it into a living system, and you can remotely control it. So in medicine, we think about how we do that to help people, how we do to repair deficits. Other people are going to think about how do they do it to expand possibilities. Now, one of the challenges that we have is that when you create a cell and you put it in somebody's body, you have to figure out where you want it. What if you want it in their brain? Right? If you want it in their brain, and you can't figure out, you don't want to do surgery to plant it in their brain. If I want a product produced in your brain that may affect the way you think, the way you act, one route to that is through stem cells. Stem cells are cells, they call them God cells. They can turn into anything. They hold the potential, unlike other cells in your body, to become anything you want them to become. And they can go find their home in the body and park there and do the work that you'd like them to do. You can infuse them, and they will find their way into the brain. So once you know that the technology is there to edit, splice, and program a cell, and the technology currently exists to administer it to somebody and have it go park anywhere you program it to go park, proliferate, and do its function, you can have things activated in other people's brains. You can have the timed release of information on demand. So DNA encryption, it's quite important. The coding system, DNA steganography, I'll just say the short story on this is people have figured out how to hide imagery in the DNA of bacteria, and when you phosphoresce the bacteria, you can discover the information, or you can have those are just to remind me, you can have the information reproduced in a string form as a form of a protein. Dr. Church up at Harvard has shown quite well that you can store a lot of information in 1 gram of DNA. It's essentially, that many iPads in 1 gram at room temperature. No supercooling required. DNA is highly stable. It's been around on the planet a very long time. So between CRISPR, the storage capacity, and programming cells, the new way to hide information is going to be in DNA. Why would you have a digital system when you can have a DNA system? It can store all the information you'd ever need, records, photos, anything. This was the first experiment showing what imagery you can hide in bacteria. This is the latest. It's a GIF file. It was actually programmed into the DNA of bacteria last year. The bacteria reproduced, and the offspring from the reproduction cycle would still produce this movie. Pretty cool. You can hide information in bacteria, and when the bacteria multiply, they can go into a spore form and last for a very long time. No one can scan you and find a bacteria. We don't have anything that can detect that. When people, so if you want to be able to encode information, take pictures of information, create something in DNA and don't want it in your own body, it can be bacteria on some portion of your body, right? All they have to do is scrape it, let it grow in the Petri dish, and unpack the information. This is all available now. This isn't science fiction, but you can encode movies. Well, this is what the Chinese are doing with DNA. We are doing things with DNA as well, but the Chinese are fairly convinced that DNA encryption and encoding would be one tremendous challenge even for quantum computing. So this is where the race is right now, trying to merge quantum computing with what you'd call a wet hard drive with DNA. Merging DNA systems with quantum computing will be really quite an amazing and both lethal threat for that.